Hello YouTube, how's it going? This is Francisco here, and well, it's the holidays, so I am out of town and spending some time with my family. But I was playing some Moto here and there, and I actually played this matchup, which I thought was kind of interesting because it was all the fight was being played on a different place rather than the board stage, which I thought was kind of interesting. But yeah, so I thought that it was pretty cool, and I wanted to make a video to analyze it as a matchup close. So I really hope you enjoy it, and if you do, well, of course, make sure you like and subscribe and all that good stuff. But yeah, let's get right to the action. This is game one, and we are actually playing against an unknown opponent at this point. So when we look at at our opener, sorry, and our opponent mulligans to 6, we keep a decent 7. We are gonna be able to play Scout on 1. Then we're gonna basically make sure that we are not missing any land drops. We already have a Titan thanks to the Tellurian West. Even if the Segura Drive Scout gets answered, we're still in a fine spot because we have access to Azusa. My opponent plays a Misty Rainforest on turn 1, which, considering what the metagame looks like right now, this means Simic Ursa, or, this is the Oko Fetchland. So I'm expecting to be playing against an Oko deck, which shortly I will figure out that that's the case. If you are wondering why there's a Reclamation Sage in my main deck, the reason for that, you can always, that you can check out the link to the deck list in the description below, but it's because I've been facing a lot of turn 1 game 1 Ensnaring Bridges, sorry, and I've lost many games while that happened. So basically my current list, I have 1 Oko in the main deck, as well as a Reclamation Sage to make the split, playing the second copy of Oko in the sideboard. So with my opponent playing a snow-covered island, I'm still not sure what they are doing, but since they have Opt, which they played at the end of my turn, at this point I know that my opponent is on some kind of control deck, and the snow in the snow-covered island suggests that maybe they're playing some Oko concoction. But yeah, now that I see the Temple Garden as well, and on Thin Ice, which is definitely a spicy one, I was not expecting that one. So yeah, that's actually a pretty good answer to my Scout, because it doesn't give me a land like Path to Exile would. So I find the Ghost Quarter off of the Ancient Steerings. I actually make a mistake here. I should actually have played the Simic Chamber, because this gemstone mine actually is going to die if I want to play Azusa next turn. However, now that my opponent basically hasn't done anything for the past couple of turns, I think that this is going to be a longer game, so I'm not particularly afraid of this situation. It was still a mistake, and if they have Field of Ruin or something like that, maybe it's actually correct for me not to expose the Simic Chamber just yet. But if that were the case, maybe I should have played the Tellurian West out instead, because I'm not going to have a green mana to cast these Ancient Steerings unless I use the Gemstone Mine. So I still need to make sure that I can reset this before I can get anything going. So yeah, a small mistake there, but it's probably not going to be a big deal. And there it is. The Bane of Modern, Oko Teeth of Crowns, comes into play. I end up going for Ghost Quarter on the island, just because I want to make sure that after making my mistake, this seemed like the correct line to take. Basically, I need to start getting ahead again, and getting my Sakura Drive Scout back is exactly what's going to allow me to do this. So that's why I go ahead and I Ghost Quarter the land. On Thin Ice falls down, and end of turn Sakura Drive Scout comes back to play, which means it's not Summon and Sick anymore by the time my turn comes around. And here I just play my bounce land, and I'm going to replay Gemstone Mine just so I can Ancient Steering, see what I find. And I find Cavern of Souls. I know that I'm playing against a control deck, so this feels good. My opponent pluses Oko on the Scout, and then on draw step they go after my Simic Chamber. At this point I'm pretty happy with my situation. I already have Field of the Dead in hand, and I now have enough mana to play my Azusa, and then play Field of Dead plus Tolaria West here, while at the same time clocking my opponent's Oko. If they want to Oko my Azusa, this is also just fine here, right? Because Azusa, and this is why Azusa is so good against Oko specifically. It's just they can't prevent Azusa from getting full value, as long as of course you're sequencing your lands properly. So by the time that Azusa has gotten value, it just gets us in a lot of situations. It gets us ahead enough or at parity with the Yoko itself, and unless we are actually missing land drops or our opponent has like a really wide board state or something like that, it's not enough for Oko to overpower Azusa plus Titan. We're still missing a Titan here, but at least we're looking good. So we play my lands, make sure I sequence properly, play my tap lands, and attack the Yoko down to 4. My opponent taps, immediately goes for the plus on the Azusa on their turn, and then they play Spreading Seas. This actually is pretty surprising. I haven't seen Spreading Seas out of control deck in a while. They go after my Field of Dead, which is interesting, but at the same time it's not that crazy, since that's the card that's probably going to kill them sooner rather than later. However, this is actually kind of great for me because it allows me to to transmute this Tolaria West. It gives me the second blue mana that I need in order to transmute this Tolaria West to get my Titan, and I also have a Scout mana here, which is good. So Sakura Tribe Scout actually not a terrible draw right there. I considered transmuting for a bounce land, which would allow me to play the bounce land to not miss my land drop and bounce the Tolaria West. Then we can transmute the Tolaria West for a Summoner's Pact. But I already have access to Titan mana. I probably don't even mind exposing this Cavern of Souls here, because that means that I only get got by Mana Leak, and my opponent's not that likely to be playing Mana Leak in their deck. But yeah, no, I think that I'm in a situation where I can actually just get away with it. And here I attack into the Yoko. My opponent has Snake mana, I spend Quaddle mana, so they can still flash in a Snake and trade with one of my creatures. It doesn't really matter which. The proper one would be to trade with the Scout, so it's if I have another Asus, I can't really play it. But yeah. So my opponent does indeed have the Snake, which is fine. It's a little bit annoying, but it's fine. So they trade with the Azusa, and I play my land, and I play my I transmute for Summoner's Pact, and I play my Cavern of Souls. My opponent passes the turn, and this is the key turn of the game. And I'm sorry that it went by so quick. So I draw once upon a time. My opponent knows that I have Summoner's Pact in hand because I transmitted for on the previous turn. So I untap, and the first thing that I do is I attack. And the reason for this is that if my opponent has something like Spell Queller, another Snake, something like that, that means that now I'm actually I'm free to resolve my Titan, basically, right? So if my opponent wants to protect their Oko, that means that they cannot stop my Titan from happening. And because of that, is that I basically have a free attack. So I attack with Scout, and they might have a Spell Queller. I suspect at this point that they might be playing a Stoneforge Mystic deck. I'm not sure, but we're going to see. But I go straight to combat, and I attack both creatures at Oko. I am basically giving away my Scout if my opponent does have a Spell Queller or a Snake, but I'm perfectly fine with that. In fact, I actually want my opponent to do that, because that means that I'm going to be free to resolve my Summoner's Pact. So I attack, my opponent does nothing, and in my second main phase, I do the correct thing to do, which is nothing. I actually let the turn go to the end step. Go to the end step, not do anything, and as expected, my opponent is going to show their hand. They have a Spell Queller. In response to the Queller, I once upon a time find the Castle Garenberg. This is actually nice because now I'm not suffering if my opponent actually does answer my what am I trying to say here? Oh yeah, I don't need to. It doesn't cost me a land to do this thing. And now we're gonna do the same thing. So we're gonna go to combat. My opponent attacks. Cool. No, we packed first, right? And my opponent does have the Force of Negation. If my opponent had the Mana Leak, that would have been the worst case scenario for me. But they actually are forced to 2-for-1 themselves in order to cast Force of Negation, pitch into Fairy, which I'm actually okay with. And here is actually an interesting situation because here I have Spreading Seas on both Cavern and Field of Dead, and I can actually play the Reclamation Sage, and I can do a little bit of everything right now. I can play Reclamation Sage, I can start getting value from this Field of the Dead, I can start using Sacred Tribe Scout to give me zombies, and I also can use this blue mana. I can float mana, and I can use it to transmute before actually, destroying the land. It kind of doesn't matter. It's kind of the same, but it's still something that I'm able to do without even costing me my Gemstone Mine, which is good. So now at this point, I'm just pressuring my opponent from a bunch of different axes. They are going to lose to this Field of Dead. They're also going to lose to the Titan that I'm going to transmute for. But I don't even need to. So I just play my castle. And again, just pass the turn. Feeling pretty far ahead here. My opponent needs to do something about my board state and my current land situation. And it was all about not pacting on the previous turn. Here, Astrolabe, my opponent plays a land. They don't attack with Spellqueller, which means I'm actually, very happy because they're not clocking me. And I just basically keep on doing the same thing, and there's nothing that I need to do. So I just play a bounce land, bounce the Simicold Chamber again, float my mana. Now I can transmute for Summoner's Pact. Bounce Tolaria West, transmute, continue getting my zombies, and just keep on doing nothing. There's nothing that I need to do. I don't need to lower my guard, and my opponent is priced into doing something about it. Here I play the Azusa, I just go to combat, start by attacking with everything, minus the Scout obviously. At this point I have my opponent on a 2-turn clock just with the zombies, and I play the Azusa, I start playing zombies and my opponent concedes. But the key situation is just knowing what is the axis that the game is going to be played on, basically. I'm in a situation where if time goes by, that actually benefits me, right? Because my opponent doesn't have a clock. I put myself in a situation where their side of the board is completely clear, and they are dying to my board already. So in order to maximize my chances of winning, what I need to figure out is what am I losing to. And what I'm losing to is my opponent somehow answering my pact, and allowing my opponent to get value from their cards, like in this case, Spellqueller. So I thought that it was a cool thing that came up in this match. And the second match actually was a little bit similar. So let's check that one out real quick. At this point, we know that we're playing against Bant. We don't know whether my opponent's playing Stoneforge or not. So I was not sure whether to bring in the Force of Vigor. In the end, I decided that I am going to, and the reason for that is that I saw multiple enchantments from my opponents, Spreading Seas, on Thin Ice. So I think I'm okay, like hedging a little bit towards that. I'm bringing in the Force of Vigor as well. Here, I cited a couple of lines that I consider to be irrelevant. I have no reason to believe my opponent's playing Snapcaster Mages. Maybe they are. So, once I get more information, I'm going to bring Bojuka Bog back in. But we're going to be playing a longer game. Summoner's Pact is really bad against Spellqueller specifically. So, whenever I play against Spellqueller decks, I do shave a little bit more aggressively on pacts than I would otherwise in a control slash tempo matchup. But Spellqueller is such a beating that I don't want to draw Summoner's Pact, basically. I want them to be in the deck because I want to be able to, I want to have the option to chain Titans, but I don't really want to draw them, so I only keep a couple of them. Taking out Amulet of Vigor, and I'm expecting Ashiok, so that's why I cut one once upon a time, one steerings instead of just cutting two steerings, because steerings helps me find engineered explosives, which I have the full 2 copies of. Sorry, so because I want to have more reliable ways to find engineered explosives, is that I choose to play an extra copy of Ancient Strings over the Once Upon a Time, even though Once Upon a Time is overall the superior cantrip. And then Castle, because I'm expecting Damping Sphere from my opponent, also the same reason why I have Golgari Rot Farm here in the sideboard. I do shave one bounce land when I'm expecting Damping Sphere and the matchup to not go particularly quickly. And same thing with Amulet of Vigor over here. And Castle Gunnbreak, because I'm expecting my opponent to bring in counter magic, so I really want to make sure that I have caverns, right? So I brought in the second cavern. Alright, so my opponent's going to be on the play. And this hand is just textbook great hand. We're going to be able to, once upon a time, first we find a Field of Death. I thought, let me stop right there. I had a Gruul Turf in that Once Upon a Time as well. With my current situation, my mana situation that is, I think that actually Gruul Turf is a little bit inferior. Again, I'm trying to make my land draft because I want to play around a potential Damping Sphere, which I'm expecting my opponent to have. So Field of the Dead actually allows me to not miss a land drop in case they have Field of the Dead, in case they have Damping Sphere, or Field of Ruin actually. And Field of the Dead actually represents a threat that my opponent needs to answer. So that's why I go with Field of Dead over the Gruul Turf there, because I already have one bounce on. If I had not access to these Simigoth, if I didn't have access, to the Simigoth Chamber, then I would certainly have gotten the Gruul Turf. But considering what our hand looks like, I think it's correct for me to take the the Field of the Dead there. My opponent they were on the plate, and they played a Flutter Strand and say go. End of turn, they're going to opt and then pass the turn. They're going to show me a Field of Ruin, and this is actually key right here. This is a great show of weakness from my opponent, because this Field of Ruin is not representing the Quaddle, right? It's not representing the Snake, it's not representing removal. So at this point, I know that my opponent is going to be a little bit, struggling on mana. I am exposing the Cavern of Souls because I think that it's very likely that they have a second Field of Ruin, or they straight up don't have another land. And if they do have another Field of Ruin, they're going to be very, very incentivized to just, use it, basically, because they want to fix their own mana. So because of that, I want to put a very juicy target for them into play, right? I could have just, played Gemstone Mine and, played Terraria West or something. Maybe in Field of the Dead, but I think a Cavern of Souls at this point in the game is going to be a really, really juicy target. Also, it has the upside of being an untapped source, which allows me to Amulet, so that's great. But yeah, we cast another Steerings. And here we have Ghost Quarter or Snow-Covered Forest. I think that this is a very easy Ghost Quarter, mostly because we want our basics to be still in our deck. It could be defensible if we're expecting my opponent to play Damping Sphere, but my opponent had a great turn on the previous turn to play Damping Sphere, so I don't think that they have any right now. Though I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure that I'm not. But yeah, when my opponent shows me Field of Ruin, I definitely want all my basics to stay still in my deck. The only thing that makes it a little bit sad is that we are actually bottoming some good cards there. But it's gonna be okay. Alright, so we play our Amulet. If my opponent has Mana Leak, that kind of stuff, I really want them to use it. Because that means that my Summoner's Pacts are gonna be that much better. And here, I'm gonna pass the turn. Opponent just main faces the activation of Field of Ruin. Of course, we blow them out with this instant speed activation from the Scout, and basically my opponent spends 2 mana on their turn to destroy their own land. That's actually a pretty solid draw because it allows me to transmute for a Summoner's Pact. So we transmute for Pact and pass the turn. Of course, holding up mana. If my opponent wants to field me, I'm perfectly okay with that at this point. So I'm actually going to give away the bounce land basically, because at this point it just doesn't matter, right? I, Here actually I this move actually surprises me that they just path the scout, but at this point it doesn't really matter. Like this is easy mode from here on. But yeah, so the the main game that I wanted to show was the first one. I thought that it was very cool how it played on a different axis than most games. It was not really about the stuff that I did, but it was more about the stuff that I did not do, and why I did not do those things. But yeah, so I thought it was a cool thought experiment, and it shows how you should be approaching this kind of matchup. You know, this kind of like instant speed. Try to make sure that you outwit your opponent and every step of the game is very cool, and it's one of my favorite matchups to play. Same thing against blue-white control. Now there's like that Bant control deck, which is becoming pretty popular, that just plays Oko basically. Just everything just adds Oko and makes the deck better. But yeah, hope you enjoy the video, and yeah, hopefully I will get the stream back. But in the meantime, you have a little bit of something to enjoy, and to make sure that those Primordial Titans keep on being cast. Merry Christmas to those of you that celebrate it, and happy holidays to everybody. Have an amazing rest of your day, and bye bye. See you in the next one.